Translate it, dirtbag. Let's see what you're worth. Grant Wexler's laugh sliced through the boardroom as he hurled the thick Chinese contract at Nia Brooks. The pages struck her janitor's cart and slid across the marble to her feet. "Tell you what," he said, loud enough for the executives on speaker to hear, "translate this entire contract correctly, and I'll hand you $1 million myself." A few chuckled. The room went still, all eyes on her. A security guard shifted by the door, blocking the exit. Grant stepped closer, cologne sharp in the air, certain the woman in a cleaning uniform would fold under pressure. He didn't know she could read every word, or that a single buried clause could collapse everything he'd built. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The executive floor gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights as Nia Brooks guided her cleaning cart down the empty hallway. Her footsteps echoed against marble floors that reflected a row of stern CEO portraits, all men in expensive suits with practiced smiles. Security Supervisor Hank Doyle stood at his post, radio clipped to his belt. His eyes narrowed as Nia approached the checkpoint. She'd cleaned this floor hundreds of times, but tonight felt different. The air crackled with tension. "Badge," Hank demanded, holding out his hand. Nia unclipped her ID from her uniform. He made a show of examining it, turning it over slowly before scanning it once, twice. "She's clear. For now," he reported into his radio, emphasizing the last words. Through the glass walls of the conference room, Nia could see frantic movement. CEO Grant Wexler paced in his tailored suit, gesturing sharply. CFO Daphne Klein sat rigid in her chair, perfectly manicured nails drumming against the polished table. General Counsel Elliot Park shuffled through papers, his usual composure cracking. "What do you mean we can't proceed?" Grant's voice carried through the glass. "The board is waiting on this call." "The translation service is backed up," Elliot explained, tugging at his collar. "They can't get to it until morning." "Morning?" Daphne's voice rose. "The Asian market's open in 3 hours. We need this done now." Nia kept her head down, methodically moving her mop across the floor. The executives ignored her presence entirely, until Grant's eyes landed on her uniform. A cruel smile spread across his face. "Hey, cleaning lady," he called out, making Nia pause. "Come in here." Hank stepped forward. "Sir, she's not authorized." "I'm authorizing it," Grant cut him off. "Bring her in." Nia felt every eye in the room on her as she entered. The conference room reeked of expensive cologne and desperation. Grant stood at the head of the table, next to a massive screen showing a waiting video conference. "What's your name?" he asked, though her badge was clearly visible. "Nia Brooks, sir." "Well, Nia." Grant's tone dripped with condescension. "How would you like to make some real money tonight? Not just—" He waved dismissively at her cart. "Whatever they pay for that." Daphne shifted uncomfortably. Elliot's expression remained carefully blank. "I have a proposition for you," Grant continued, warming to his audience. "Translate this Chinese contract and I'll give you $1 million. He laughed, clearly expecting others to join in. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. Nia studied the document on the table. Her heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. The first clause states that any relationship adjustment, which is actually a termination clause in disguise, triggers an automatic penalty of 50 million yuan. The laughter died instantly. Grant's smile froze. The second page outlines a payment schedule that would drain company accounts through deliberately mistranslated terms, Nia continued. And there's a reference to a side letter that isn't included here, one that appears to contain additional binding terms. Dead silence filled the room. Grant's jaw had gone slack. Daphne stared at Nia like she'd just performed a magic trick. Elliot frantically scribbled notes. A voice crackled from the video screen. "Did she say termination penalty? Stop the call." "Stop it now!" Elliot scrambled to pause the board meeting, while Daphne leaned forward. Where did you learn?" "Who are you?" someone whispered. Grant's face had transformed. The showman's smile was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. He forced his features into a pleasant mask, but his eyes burned with barely contained rage. "Well," he said smoothly, "this is unexpected. We'll certainly need to discuss appropriate compensation for your assistance." The word assistance carried a weight of threat. Nia felt Hank move closer behind her, his presence like a shadow at her back. The security supervisor's hand rested meaningfully on his radio, ready to call for backup at Grant's signal. "Thank you," Nia said quietly. "Would you like me to continue with the translation?" "That won't be necessary," Grant replied, his practiced charm failing to mask the ice in his voice. "Mr. Doyle will escort you back to your duties." Daphne wouldn't meet her eyes now. Elliot busied himself with his papers. The room had shifted from shocked silence to active dismissal, as though trying to erase the last 5 minutes. The click of Hank's boots against marble echoed as he moved to Nia's side. "This way," he ordered gruffly. As Nia turned to leave, she caught her reflection in the glass wall, small against the towering windows, but standing straight. Behind her, Grant's face promised consequences, his fingers drumming against the contract she'd just exposed. The heavy conference room door swung shut behind them. Hank's hand clamped down on Nia's shoulder, steering her back toward her cart. The executive floor stretched before them, silent except for their footsteps and the distant hum of the building's ventilation system. The marble hallway felt colder now. Nia gripped her mop handle, trying to return to her routine, but Grant Wexler's polished shoes appeared in her path. Behind him, Daphne Klein studied her phone with sudden intensity, refusing to look up. "Nia," Grant's voice carried down the corridor, theatrical and warm. "I want to properly thank you for your help tonight." He gestured expansively, performing gratitude for the small crowd of executives filtering out of the conference room. That could have been quite the situation. Fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across his face. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just doing my job, sir," Nia replied quietly, keeping her voice neutral. "About that." Grant stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Let's discuss appropriate compensation." He pulled out his wallet, thick with credit cards. "I'm thinking a $500 bonus should cover it." Nia's hands tightened on the mop handle. $500, not $1 million. Not even close. "That's very generous," she said carefully. "It is, isn't it?" Grant's tone sharpened. "Especially for someone who shouldn't have been in that room in the first place." He leaned in, cologne overwhelming. "I suggest you forget what you saw in that contract. Some things aren't meant for everyone's eyes. Understood?" Behind him, Daphne's perfectly manicured nails tapped faster against her phone screen. The CFO's shoulders were tense, but she remained silent. "Yes, sir," Nia replied. "I understand perfectly." Grant's smile widened, satisfied by her apparent submission. He dropped 5 crisp $100 bills onto her cart. "Good girl. Back to work then." Nia resumed mopping, maintaining a steady rhythm despite her racing heart. Through the glass walls, she watched Elliott Park rushing between offices. The general counsel gathered papers with frantic energy, clutching the Chinese contract like it might burst into flames. Heavy footsteps shadowed her movements. Hank Doyle had positioned himself at the end of the hallway, radio crackling with static. "Just following protocol," he called out when she glanced his way. But his hand rested on his security badge, a subtle reminder of his authority to restrict her access. The service elevator dinged. Malik Rains stepped out, pushing his maintenance cart. His eyes met Nia's briefly as he passed. "Cameras up here get reviewed real creative-like," he murmured, just loud enough for her to hear. "Footage has a way of showing what they want it to show." Nia kept mopping, processing his warning. The executive floor's security cameras would become their weapons, not her protection. When her shift ended, she headed to the basement locker room. The familiar scent of industrial cleaner couldn't mask her unease. Her locker door hung slightly open, though she distinctly remembered closing it. Inside, her small notebook had been moved. The pages where she'd jotted down key phrases from the contract were creased differently now. Someone had been through her things, erasing as they went. Her phone buzzed with a new company-wide email from HR reminding all staff of updated confidentiality and security protocols. Effective immediately, janitorial and maintenance employees were restricted from accessing executive floors during meetings, with no exceptions, and badge permissions would be adjusted accordingly in the interest of overall security. The timestamp was 11:47 p.m. They weren't wasting any time rewriting the narrative. By midnight, Nia sat at her small kitchen table, a fresh notebook open before her. Her apartment was quiet except for the hum of the ancient refrigerator and distant traffic. The $500 bills lay untouched beside her, Grant's insult made tangible. She began writing, her pen moving steadily across the paper. The Mandarin characters took shape from memory. The hidden termination clause, the penalty triggers, the reference to that missing side letter. Her translation certification hadn't come easily. Years of study with her elderly neighbor Mrs. Liu, drinking tea and practicing characters until her hand cramped. The contract's true meaning couldn't be buried under security protocols and convenient reinterpretations, not while she could still write these words. A siren wailed somewhere in the city. Nia kept writing, filling page after page with evidence they thought they could erase. Her small table didn't gleam like the executive conference room's polished surface. Her chair wasn't leather, but truth didn't need marble floors to stand on. She wrote every character she remembered, every clause that had made Grant's smile freeze. They might control the building's cameras and badge readers, they might search her locker and restrict her access, but they couldn't erase what she knew. The kitchen clock ticked toward 1 a.m. Nia's hand moved steadily across the paper, each stroke a quiet act of defiance. They expected her to disappear back into invisibility, to accept $500 and forget what she'd seen. She wrote another line of characters, another piece of proof. Let them try to bury this. Let them think their protocols and power plays would be enough. She had survived worse than Grant Wexler's threats and Hank Doyle's surveillance. The truth was, there in black ink, in 2 languages, waiting to be heard. The morning sun hadn't fully risen when Nia pushed open the door of Mason's diner. The bell chimed softly, mixing with the clatter of plates and smell of coffee. Pastor Laverne Price sat in her usual booth, both hands wrapped around a steaming mug. "Child, you look like you haven't slept," Pastor Laverne said, as Nia slid into the cracked vinyl seat. "Maybe 2 hours." Nia managed a tired smile. "But I needed to talk to you before my shift." A waitress appeared with a coffee pot. Nia nodded gratefully as the dark liquid filled her cup. The diner was half empty, mostly regulars who worked early shifts like her. The gentle murmur of conversations and scraping forks created a bubble of privacy. "Tell me everything," Pastor Laverne said, her eyes sharp despite the early hour. "Start with how you learned to read Chinese contracts in the first place." Nia added sugar to her coffee, stirring slowly. "Remember Mrs. Liu? She lived in the apartment below mine about 8 years ago. Sweet lady. Always had candies for the children after Sunday service. She got sick that winter. Her family was all back in China, and the building manager kept forgetting to fix her heating." Nia's spoon clinked against the cup. "I started checking on her every evening, bringing soup, helping with her medication schedule." Pastor Laverne nodded. "I remember you missing choir practice those months. She couldn't sleep well at night because of her cough. So we'd sit at her kitchen table, drinking tea. She'd spread out Chinese newspapers and teach me characters." Nia smiled at the memory. "Said if I was going to visit every night, I might as well learn something useful." That's where it started. Mrs. Liu made it like a game. We'd translate articles together. Business news, mostly. She used to work in international trade before retiring. Nia's voice softened. "Even after she got better, we kept at it. Every night, for almost 3 years." The waitress returned with plates of eggs and toast. Nia picked up a piece of bacon, but didn't eat it. "When she passed away, I promised myself I'd make it mean something, used my savings to get formally certified in Mandarin translation." Nia's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. Had good jobs lined up, too. Then the tech company I worked for had layoffs. My mother's cancer came back the same month. Medical bills ate everything. And you ended up cleaning the same offices where you could have been translating. Pastor Laverne finished quietly. Until last night. Nia pulled out her notebook, voice dropping lower. But Pastor, there's something wrong in that contract. The language they used. It wasn't just business terms. What do you mean? There were phrases about warehouse shifts and adjustment schedules. But the way they wrote it. Nia opened her notebook, pointing to characters she'd copied. In Mandarin, these words together usually mean something's being hidden. Mrs. Liu taught me to spot it. How polite business language can mask ugly intentions. Pastor Laverne studied Nia's face. Baby girl, I hear what you're saying, but you need to protect yourself first. These people already showed you who they are. I know. Nia closed the notebook. But whatever they're planning, it's bigger than one contract. The way they panicked when I started translating. Just promise me you'll be careful. Document everything. Pastor Laverne reached across the table, squeezing Nia's hand. And call me if anything feels wrong. I promise. Nia checked her watch. I should head in. Don't want to give them any excuse. The afternoon sun beat down as Nia approached the office building's employee entrance. Her cleaning cart was already loaded. Supplies organized for another shift of invisible work. Brooks! Hank Doyle's voice carried across the lobby. Random security check. Nia stopped, keeping her expression neutral as the security supervisor approached. Other employees hurried past, avoiding eye contact. Badge and bag, please. Hank's tone was falsely professional, but his eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Nia handed over her ID. Hank made a show of examining it, running his fingers over the photo like checking for tampering. Bag, too. He gestured to her small backpack. New protocols. Nia unzipped her bag slowly, giving her phone time to start recording in her pocket. Hank grabbed it roughly, turning it upside down over the polished floor. Her lunch container cracked open. An apple rolled toward the entrance. Her cleaning gloves scattered across the tiles. Oops, Hank said flatly. Better pick those up. Wouldn't want anyone slipping. Nia felt eyes on her as she knelt to gather her belongings. The lobby's marble floors reflected fluorescent lights, making her feel spotlit. A group of office workers whispered by the elevator. Everything looks clear, Hank announced loudly. This time, Nia stood, carefully repacking her bag. Her voice remained steady. Thank you for your thoroughness. Just doing my job. Hank's radio crackled. Oh, and Brooks, you'll need to clock in at the security desk from now on. New system flag on your file. At the desk, Nia watched the guard type her ID number. The screen flashed red before accepting her punch-in. Above her name, bold letters warned, Security Concern. Her phone was still recording in her pocket, capturing every word, every shuffled step, every pointed silence. They wanted her humiliated. Instead, she felt each moment crystallizing into evidence. The cleaning cart's wheels squeaked as she pushed it toward the service elevator. Her lunch was crushed, her apple bruised, but her hands remained steady. Let them think they'd won this round. Let them believe their petty cruelties would make her disappear. The HR office felt colder than the rest of the building. Nia sat in an uncomfortable chair, facing three people who wanted her gone. HR Manager Tessa Rowan, with her practiced sympathetic smile, General Counsel Elliot Park clutching a stack of papers, and Security Supervisor Hank Doyle blocking the door like a guard. Afternoon sun slanted through vertical blinds, creating prison bar shadows across the desk. Miss Brooks, Tessa began, folding her manicured hands. We need to discuss a serious breach of company policy. Nia kept her posture straight, her face calm. What breach would that be? Elliot Park cleared his throat. You accessed highly confidential materials without authorization during last night's executive meeting. I was invited into that room, Nia said, by Mr. Wexler himself. Being physically present doesn't grant you permission to view or translate sensitive documents, Elliot countered. The company could pursue criminal charges for corporate theft. Tessa leaned forward, her voice dripping with fake concern. We don't want it to come to that. We're offering you an opportunity to resolve this quietly. Elliot slid 2 documents across the desk. The first was thick with legal language, an NDA. The second was a single page showing a severance amount that wouldn't cover 2 months' rent. Sign today, Elliot said, and we can all move forward without unnecessary complications. Nia studied the amount, letting the insult sink in. After saving them from a contract disaster, they thought they could buy her silence with pocket change. People like you don't understand the stakes here, Tessa said softly, each word landing like a slap. This is a Fortune 500 company. We have entire legal departments, resources you can't imagine. I understand perfectly, Nia replied, but I'll need time to review these documents with my attorney. Hank pushed off from the wall, his boots heavy on the carpet. The building has cameras everywhere, Brooks. Security footage can tell all kinds of stories. Is that a threat, Mr. Doyle? Just explaining how things work. He grinned. How they've always worked. I'd like a copy of my personnel file, Nia said, turning back to Tessa. It's my legal right to request it. Tessa's smile tightened. Unfortunately, our records department requires 30 business days to process such requests. And given the current situation, any file access would need special security clearance. I see. Nia gathered her bag, careful not to let her hands shake. Then, I'll need that same time to review these documents properly. Ms. Brooks, Elliot's voice hardened. This offer expires today. We're trying to be generous here. Generous would be honoring the $1 million translation offer Mr. Wexler made in front of witnesses. Nia stood, or at least not threatening me for doing exactly what he asked. That was clearly a joke, Tessa said quickly. No reasonable person would expect their janitor to read Mandarin, Nia finished. Maybe that's the real problem here. Hank stepped closer, trying to loom over her. You're making a mistake. The mistake was thinking I'd be scared into signing away my rights. Nia walked to the door, forcing Hank to move or physically block her. I'll have my lawyer contact Mr. Park about those documents. The hallway felt warmer than the HR office, but not safer. Nia could feel eyes following her, security cameras, employees pretending not to watch, managers whispering into phones. The building itself seemed to be closing in, its polished surfaces hiding traps. Malik appeared as she rounded a corner, pretending to check a thermostat. He pressed a folded paper into her hand as they passed. Service tunnels, he muttered. Security sweeps every 2 hours. Next one's at 4. Nia slipped the paper into her pocket without breaking stride. She'd learned long ago that the best way to move through hostile spaces was to act like you belonged there, even when they were trying to erase you. She reached the main lobby, its marble floors gleaming like ice. Movement caught her eye. Grant Wexler on the second-floor balcony watching her exit. His stance was casual, hands in his pockets, but his eyes were cold and calculating. He looked like a man deciding exactly how much force it would take to break something. Nia met his gaze for one steady moment. Let him see that she wasn't running, wasn't cowering. Let him wonder why. The lobby doors opened onto afternoon heat, the city's noise washing over her like a wave. Behind her, the glass tower reflected sunlight like a blade. She could feel Grant still watching, still planning, still assuming she would eventually break under pressure. But pressure wasn't new to Nia. She'd spent years being underestimated, overlooked, pushed into corners. They thought that making her invisible meant making her powerless. They were wrong. She touched the folded map in her pocket. Malik's gift of maintenance corridors and blind spots in the surveillance. In her bag, her phone still held the recording of Hank's threats from that morning. And in her mind, she held every word of that contract, every clause that made them panic when she started translating. The sidewalk was crowded with people rushing to somewhere important. Nia joined their flow, just another worker heading home. But her mind was already mapping out what came next, what evidence she needed, what truths they couldn't bury under NDAs and security footage. Above her, Grant's silhouette remained on the balcony, a dark shape against glass and steel. The maintenance corridor thrummed with the building's mechanical heartbeat. Pipes hissed steam above their heads, and the fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows as Nia followed Malik through the maze-like passage. Their footsteps echoed against concrete walls, mixing with the distant whir of industrial air handlers. "Security does sweeps every 2 hours," Malik whispered, checking his watch. "We've got maybe 15 minutes before the next round." Nia nodded, staying close as they navigated past electrical panels and supply closets. The air grew warmer as they climbed, the building's infrastructure exposed like veins beneath skin. This was the hidden circulatory system that kept the glass tower alive, a world most executives never saw. "Here." Malik stopped at a metal door, swiping his maintenance badge. "Executive floor printer station is through there. Shift change means minimal staff for the next few minutes." The door clicked open to reveal a narrow service hall. Unlike the rough maintenance corridors, this space had carpet and painted walls, a transition zone between the building's facade and its guts. Malik gestured to a recessed alcove housing a large printer setup. "I'll watch the entrance," he said. "Make it quick." Nia moved to the printer, her heart pounding. The machine's display showed recent jobs, mostly mundane reports and meeting agendas. But there, 3 items back: draft, agreement, supplemental. She pulled out her phone, hands steady despite her racing pulse. The first page emerged showing familiar Mandarin characters. Nia photographed it quickly, then the next. On the 3rd page, she found what she needed: a reference to the missing side letter, and a vendor name written in precise shorthand. Footsteps echoed from the main corridor. A radio crackled. "Sweep starting on 4, a voice announced. Hank's voice. Malik appeared at her side, grabbing her arm. "Supply closet. Now!" They slipped inside, just as flashlight beams swept the hallway. Through the thin door, Nia could hear multiple sets of boots and the metallic click of radio transmissions. "Check the printer logs," Hank ordered. "And all the access panels." Nia held her breath, pressing deeper into the darkness between shelves of cleaning supplies. The vendor name from the draft burned in her mind. She'd seen that particular character combination before. It followed a pattern used by shell companies to obscure ownership through translation. A hand tried the closet door. Locked. Footsteps moved past. "Clear on this section," someone reported. "Moving to West Wing." They waited 2 more minutes before Malik eased the door open. The hallway was empty, but they could hear the security team in the distance. "We need to move," he whispered. "Your badge should still work on the service exit." They retraced their steps through the maintenance corridor, moving as quietly as possible. At the final security door, Nia swiped her badge. Red light. Access denied. She tried again. Same result. "They must have flagged you already," Malik said, checking his watch. "Sweep team will be circling back soon." Nia pressed against the wall, mind racing. They were trapped on the wrong side of the door, in a section she technically shouldn't be in. If security found them here... Footsteps approached from the other side. Malik pulled her into a shadow. The door beeped. Someone exiting. A delivery worker pushed through, arms full of packages. Nia caught the door before it closed, slipping through with Malik right behind her. They emerged into the regular corridor, just as radio static echoed from around the corner. "Split up," Malik muttered. "I'll see what I can find out about your access." Nia walked calmly to the elevator, her phone heavy with evidence in her pocket. The vendor name wasn't just a business partner, it was a front, part of a scheme that went beyond one bad contract. The patterns matched known tactics for hiding illegal operations, routing them through poor neighborhoods where people had less power to fight back. Grant wasn't just protecting a deal. He was protecting an entire pipeline designed to harm communities like hers. In her car, hands shaking slightly now that she was alone, Nia pulled out her phone. She typed a message to Pastor Laverne. "This isn't just business. It's targeted." The pastor's response came quickly. "Are you sure?" Nia stared at the building rising against the night sky. its windows still bright with activity. Inside those glass walls, Grant and his team were probably already working to close any gaps, erase any traces, silence any voices that might expose the truth. She thought about the vendor name, about shell companies and hidden supply routes, about neighborhoods treated like sacrifice zones by people who never had to live with the consequences. "Yes," she typed back, "and I'm going to prove it." The building loomed in her rearview mirror as she drove home, its lights reflecting off other towers like cold stars. They thought money and power made them untouchable. They thought threats and security sweeps could keep their secrets safe. But Nia had spent years being invisible in their world, watching and learning. She knew their language, not just Mandarin, but the careful phrases they used to hide harm behind policy, the way they turned buildings into weapons, using badges and cameras and access controls to enforce silence. Now she would use that knowledge to fight back, not just for herself, but for every person they thought they could sacrifice for profit. Her phone buzzed with another message from Pastor Laverne. "Come see me tomorrow. We'll make a plan." Nia pulled into her apartment complex. The familiar cracked concrete, a stark contrast to the tower's marble floors. Tonight, she would translate every character she'd photographed, mapping the connections they tried to hide in language barriers and legal walls. The lobby time clock display blinked 5:58 a.m. as Nia swiped her badge. Instead of her usual schedule, a red message flashed, "Schedule update. See supervisor." Her stomach tightened. After yesterday's maintenance corridor incident, she'd expected retaliation, but the speed of it still caught her off guard. Hank Doyle emerged from the security office, clipboard in hand and satisfaction darkening his face. "Schedule change, Brooks. Operational needs." He emphasized the words like they were bullets. "You're reassigned to public restrooms, all floors." The assignment was calculated humiliation. Public bathrooms meant constant exposure, harder cleaning, and the most demeaning work they could find. It was punishment wrapped in procedure. "I need you to sign this acknowledgement," Hank continued, holding out a form. "And we'll be conducting random spot checks of your cleaning supplies." "New protocol." Nia signed without argument, her face carefully neutral. She'd learned long ago not to give men like Hank the reaction they craved. "Oh, and Brooks," Hank called as she turned to leave, "make sure you stay in your assigned areas. Security cameras are watching." The threat hung in the air as Nia collected her cart. The lobby's marble floors reflected morning light, making everything look polished and professional. But underneath that shine, she could feel the building's machinery shifting to crush her. Throughout the morning, Hank's random checks found her like clockwork. Every hour, he or one of his officers would appear, demanding to inspect her cart or verify her location. Other employees hurried past, avoiding eye contact. During her first break, Nia sat alone in the staff room, translating the vendor name she'd photographed. The characters followed a pattern she recognized, using formal business terms to obscure ownership. Cross-referencing it with shipping schedules mentioned in the contract revealed a pattern: late-night deliveries, always through specific access points. "Hey!" Malik's voice was barely above a whisper as he passed her table. "Loading bay, 10 minutes." The loading bay hummed with industrial fans when Nia arrived. Malik stood between stacked pallets, checking his phone with practiced casualness. "Those shipments you asked about?" he said quietly. "They come through here every Thursday night. No regular manifest, special handling instructions. Always rerouted through the warehouse on Martin Luther King Boulevard. Nia's neighborhood, where property values were low and complaints rarely made it past local news. Security's tight those nights," Malik continued. "But something's off. The wait listings don't match what we see, and the paperwork's always rushed through." A door opened somewhere, and they separated quickly. Nia returned to her cart, pulling out her phone. She'd saved the number for Renee Caldwell, an employment attorney recommended by Pastor Laverne. Her fingers hovered over the keypad before pressing call. "Caldwell Legal Services," a crisp voice answered. I need to speak with Renee Caldwell about workplace retaliation, Nia said, and possibly corporate fraud. Ms. Caldwell has an opening at 7:40 this evening. Will that work? Yes, Nia confirmed, watching Hank patrol past with his ever-present clipboard. The rest of her shift unfolded like an exercise in endurance. Co-workers who'd once shared lunch breaks now found reasons to leave when she entered the break room. An HR memo circulated about legal sensitivity and limiting non-essential communication with certain staff members. Evening brought a corporate event to the upper floors. Music and laughter drifted down as executives and clients celebrated something Nia would never be invited to understand. She scrubbed bathroom tiles while designer shoes clicked past, their owners looking through her like she was part of the fixtures. Grant's voice carried from the hallway, warm with practiced charm. The partnership represents our commitment to global excellence. Nia's hands kept moving, steady and mechanical, as she thought about what excellence meant to men like Grant. How many communities would pay the price for his global vision? How many people would be treated as invisible, disposable, erasable? At 7:15, she clocked out under Hank's watchful gaze. Her back ached from hours of scrubbing, but her mind was sharp as she drove to Renee Caldwell's office. The law office occupied a modest building downtown, its lights still bright against the darkening sky. Inside, the reception area was small but orderly, with worn chairs and framed labor law certificates on the walls. Nia checked her watch. 7:40 p.m. She clutched her folder of photos and notes, evidence collected between bathroom shifts and security sweeps. Documentation of dates, times, badge scans, translations that revealed patterns in shipping records and contract clauses. Each page represented a piece of truth they'd tried to bury under marble floors and corporate policies, under operational needs and security protocols, under the assumption that a janitor couldn't possibly understand their carefully coded language. The inner office door opened, and Renee Caldwell appeared, a sharp-eyed woman in her mid-40s wearing a blazer that had seen its share of courtroom battles. "Ms. Brooks," Renee extended her hand. "Come in. Tell me what's happening at Wexler Corp." Nia stepped forward, gripping her folder like a shield and a sword combined. In it lay not just evidence of retaliation, but proof of something bigger, something that connected corporate towers to warehouse routes, boardrooms to neighborhoods, and polite phrases to hidden harm. Renee Caldwell's office smelled of coffee and printer paper. The small desk lamp cast a warm glow over the scattered documents as Nia carefully arranged her evidence. Her hands moved with practiced precision, the same careful attention she'd once used to organize her translation notes. "Start from the beginning," Renee said, uncapping a pen, "and don't skip details that might seem small." Nia pulled out her phone first, playing the audio from Hank's random security checks. The threatening undertone was clear even through the phone's speaker. Next came the photos, the contract fragments, the vendor name, the shipping records. "They're using the language barrier," Nia explained. "The Mandarin text doesn't match their English summaries. There's a whole shadow operation hidden in the translation gaps." Renee's eyes narrowed as she studied the documents. Classic retaliation pattern. They offered you silence money yet? Small severance. Big NDA. They wanted me to sign immediately. Of course they did. Renee pulled out a legal pad. They're following the standard playbook. Isolate, intimidate, eliminate. But they didn't expect you to understand their contracts, did they? "No," Nia said quietly. "They didn't expect me to exist in that room at all." Renee nodded, her pen moving quickly. "We need to document everything. Every interaction, every policy change, every random check. Names, dates, times. If someone witnesses something, write down their name. If they send an email, forward it. If they change your schedule, photograph it." She pulled out a fresh legal document. "This is a preservation letter. It demands they keep all security footage, emails, meeting notes, anything related to your case. Once they receive this, destroying evidence becomes legally dangerous." What about the contract itself? Nia asked. The shipping patterns suggest they're moving something through poor neighborhoods, using shell companies to hide it. That's beyond employment law, Renee said. But I know a federal investigator who handles corporate fraud. If you're right about the contract terms, this could be bigger than retaliation. She wrote down a name and number. Call her tomorrow. But be prepared. The company will fight harder if there's a criminal investigation. They might get desperate. For the next hour, they built Nia's case piece by piece. Renee explained legal terms in plain language, showing Nia how to strengthen her documentation. They created a timeline starting from the translation incident, marking each escalation. Remember, Renee said as they finished, they're counting on you feeling powerless, but evidence is power. The more they try to bury you, the more proof they create. The bus ride home felt longer than usual. Every bump reminded Nia of Hank's threats. Every stoplight recalled Grant's cold smile. The city outside the window blurred into patterns of light and shadow, like the dual meanings hidden in those contract phrases. In her small apartment, Nia cleared her kitchen table. She created separate folders with clear labels: contract, security, HR, deliveries. Each document went into its proper place, each incident recorded with time and date. The organization calmed her mind, gave structure to the chaos they'd tried to drown her in. But sleep came fitfully. She dreamed of marble floors that turned to quicksand, of security cameras that blinked like predator eyes, of contracts written in ink that kept changing color. The next morning, Nia arrived 45 minutes early. The lobby was still quiet. The cleaning crew's shift change not yet started. She noticed the bulletin board first, a fresh memo posted in the center, its white paper almost glowing under the fluorescent lights. Notice: unauthorized translations of company documents are strictly prohibited. Violations will result in immediate disciplinary action. Nia's phone made a soft click as she photographed the memo. The timestamp read 6:15 a.m. She forwarded it to Renee immediately, adding it to her growing evidence file. The time clock beeped as she swiped in. Her schedule still showed bathroom duty, still marked her as a security concern. But now each restriction felt less like a wall and more like a breadcrumb trail, leading straight to their desperation. The supply closet door was stuck again. Nia pushed it with her shoulder, trying to force the old lock open. That's when she heard Hank's footsteps behind her, deliberate and heavy. Having trouble, Brooks? His voice carried that false concern that always preceded a threat. He moved closer, using his bulk to trap her between the door and the wall. Just getting supplies, Nia said evenly, her phone still in her pocket, still recording. Hank's smile spread slow and ugly across his face. You like paperwork now, don't you? All those little notes you're keeping? He leaned in, dropping his voice. We can bury you in it. Incident reports, security violations, performance reviews. By the time we're done, you'll need a truck just to carry your file. Nia kept her expression neutral, but her mind was already categorizing his words, filing them away as evidence. Each threat was another brick in the wall of their own destruction. They thought paperwork was their weapon, never realizing she'd learned to read between every line they wrote. The parking garage lights cast harsh shadows across the concrete floor as Nia walked toward the bus stop. Her footsteps echoed in the nearly empty structure, each step amplified by exhaustion from another long shift. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder, feeling the weight of her documentation folder inside. Movement caught her eye. Hank Doyle emerged from behind a concrete pillar, flanked by two security guards she recognized from the lobby desk. They spread out, blocking her path to the exit. Going somewhere, Brooks? Hank's voice carried that false professional tone that made her skin crawl. Nia's hand slipped into her pocket, finding her phone. One tap activated the recording app. A habit now, necessary as breathing. I'm heading home. My shift ended at 10. We've had reports of missing supplies. Hank gestured to one of the guards. Cleaning products disappearing from storage. Policy requires random bag checks for all suspicious activity. The word suspicious dripped with meaning. Several late-shift employees hurried past, eyes down, pretending not to see what was happening. "Put your bag on the ground," Hank ordered. "Now!" Nia slowly lowered her bag, maintaining eye contact. "This is harassment, Mr. Doyle. This is security protocol." He snapped on latex gloves with theatrical precision. "Arms out, please." The guard roughly unzipped her bag, dumping the contents onto the cold concrete. Her wallet skittered across the floor. Her lunch container cracked open, spilling yesterday's rice. Her carefully organized folder hit the ground, papers spreading like fallen leaves. "Look at that," Hank said, nudging her translation notes with his foot. "More unauthorized documents. On company property. Those are my personal notes." Nia's voice remained steady, even as her hands trembled with rage. "I have a right to my own property." "On your knees," Hank ordered. "Pick it up." All of it. A small crowd had gathered at a safe distance, watching. Some filmed with phones, but no one stepped forward. Nia slowly knelt, gathering her scattered belongings while her phone recorded every sound, every command. "I could call the police," Hank continued, standing over her. "Theft of company property is a serious offense, but I'm trying to protect you here. The company has ways of handling these situations, officially or unofficially." Nia reached for her wallet, but one of the guards kicked it further away, forcing her to crawl after it. "This is what happens," Hank said louder for his audience, "when people don't understand their place in the building." "Hey!" Malik's voice cut through the garage. He strode toward them, maintenance keys jingling at his belt. "What's going on here?" "Standard security check," Hank said, his tone shifting. "Nothing to concern maintenance." "I'm concerned." Malik planted himself next to Nia. "And I'm staying right here until she's done." Hank's jaw tightened. Violence lived in his eyes, but Malik's presence complicated things. Physical assault would require too much paperwork, too many witnesses. Nia carefully repacked her bag, each movement deliberate. Her documentation was slightly crumpled, but intact. More evidence for Renee's growing file. "We're done here," Hank announced, stepping back. "For now. But remember, Brooks, we're watching. Always watching." The next morning, fluorescent lights hummed in the community center's basement as Nia faced a skeptical crowd. Pastor Laverne had gathered local residents, but doubt filled their faces as Nia explained about the contract and the hidden shipments. "Company's always got some scheme," an elderly man said. "What makes this different?" Nia pulled out her translation notes. "Because this time, we can prove it. Listen to how they hide it in the language." She read the Mandarin phrases, then translated the corporate doublespeak. Adjustment protocols meant forced relocations. Resource optimization meant toxic storage. Community integration meant using poor neighborhoods as dumping grounds. "They write it in code," Nia explained, counting on no one being able to read both versions. "But every warehouse shift they mention lines up with a shell company. Every delivery route targets areas they think won't fight back." The room's energy shifted. Doubt transformed into understanding, then anger. People started sharing stories. Mysterious truck traffic, unexplained health issues, property values dropping without explanation. "They think we're invisible," a young mother said, clutching her phone with shaking hands. "Like we don't exist." "That's exactly what they think." Pastor Laverne stood, her presence commanding attention. "But they forgot something important. Invisible people see everything." She turned to the crowd. "Tomorrow evening, we're holding another meeting. Bigger. Bring your neighbors. Bring your proof. Bring your phones to record." Nia watched faces harden with determination. The same determination she'd felt in that marble-floored conference room when Grant had tried to turn her into a joke. But she wasn't laughing now, and neither was her community. Her phone buzzed, a message from Renee about the preservation letter. The legal wheels were turning, but now something larger was moving too. Every person in this room represented another crack in the company's facade, another witness to their pattern of abuse. They'd tried to bury her in paper and protocol, to drown her in their corporate machinery, but they'd forgotten that machines could be understood, documented, exposed. Each threat created new evidence. Each intimidation tactic strengthened their case. The fight was growing beyond her job now, beyond one contract or one translation. It was becoming something they couldn't control with security badges or NDAs. The truth, finally spoken in every necessary language. Malik's keys jingled softly as he led Nia through the narrow service stairwell. The emergency lights cast a sickly green glow, making shadows dance across the concrete walls. Their footsteps, no matter how careful, echoed in the confined space. "Security team changes in 15 minutes, Malik whispered, checking his watch. "Third-floor printer queue is right above IT. That's where they dump overflow from executive floors." Nia nodded, her phone ready in her pocket. "How long before the next sweep?" "Maybe 10 minutes. They're trying new patterns to catch you." Malik paused at a heavy metal door, listening. But Hank's team is predictable. Always starts from the top floor. Works down. The door creaked as they entered a dimly lit hallway. Empty cubicles stretched into darkness, the only light coming from humming monitors and blinking printer status lights. The air smelled of toner and stale coffee. "There." Malik pointed to a large printer station near the far wall. "That one connects to the executive network." Nia moved quickly, her cleaning cart providing cover as she approached the printer. Years of late-night work had taught her to move silently, to become part of the building's background noise. Her fingers found the print queue display, scrolling through recent jobs. The screen flickered with corporate templates and meeting notes, but then Chinese characters caught her eye. An email header, partially truncated. Below it, an attachment name that made her pulse quicken. She raised her phone, careful to avoid flash, and captured several angles of the screen. The Mandarin file name contained a familiar pattern, the same coded language from the contract, but with new elements. References to adjustment protocols and what looked like coordinates. A sharp click echoed through the floor. Fluorescent lights snapped on at the far end of the office. "Brooks!" Hank's voice boomed. "I know you're up here." Malik reacted instantly, shoving a maintenance cart across the aisle to block sight lines. Nia ducked low, following him behind a utility door as footsteps approached. The closet was tiny, packed with cleaning supplies and electrical panels. She held her breath, feeling her heart hammer against her ribs. But her mind stayed focused. She repeated the Mandarin file name in her head over and over, burning it into memory. Each character was a puzzle piece, connecting the contract to whatever they were hiding in those warehouses. Radio static crackled nearby. "East side clear," a guard reported. "Moving to central offices." "Check every closet," Hank ordered. "She's not supposed to be on this floor." Malik pressed his ear to the door, then held up 3 fingers. 2, 1. He eased it open, just as heavy boots rounded the corner behind them. They slipped into the hallway, moving quick and quiet toward the service elevator. "Loading bay," Malik whispered. They never watch it properly during shift change. They emerged into the cavernous loading area just as a delivery truck backed up to the dock, its beeping providing cover for their footsteps. A security guard turned the corner behind them, but Nia was already moving through a group of workers unloading boxes. She kept her face down, blending with the routine chaos of evening deliveries. Nia's hands shook as she checked her phone, making sure the photos had saved. The file name was clear enough to read, proof that whatever operation they were running, it connected directly to the executive floor. "Go," Malik urged, gesturing toward the side exit. "Community's waiting." Nia hurried through the evening air, her comfortable shoes carrying her quickly down familiar streets. The church hall lights glowed ahead, and she could see people filing in, carrying phones and papers. Some held children's hands, others clutched medical bills or property records. Pastor Laverne stood at the entrance, greeting each person by name. Her eyes widened when she saw Nia's face. "You okay, child? You're breathing hard." "Had to take the long way," Nia managed, trying to slow her racing heart. She refused to let fear show on her face. These were her neighbors, her community. They deserved steady strength, not panic. Inside, the church hall hummed with worried conversation. Folding chairs filled with faces she recognized from bus stops and corner stores. A mother from her building bounced a fussy baby. The elderly man who ran the hardware store sat near the front, frowning at a stack of invoices. Malik slipped in behind her, nodding encouragement. He'd risked his job to help her gather evidence. They all risked something just by being here. Nia walked to the front of the room, her phone heavy in her hand. The screen still showed the damning photos, corporate documents that proved what everyone had suspected but couldn't prove. Her fingers had memorized the shape of those Mandarin characters, each one a key to unlocking the company's true plans. The crowd gradually fell silent, waiting. Pastor Laverne stepped aside, giving Nia the floor. 100 eyes fixed on her, some doubtful, some hopeful, all hungry for truth. Nia raised her phone like a torch against darkness, her voice carried to every corner of the hall, steady despite her racing pulse. "They're moving something through our neighborhood." The words hung in the air, heavy with promise and threat. She had proof now. Digital breadcrumbs leading straight to the executive floor. But more importantly, she had witnesses, people who refused to be invisible in their own community. Each person in this room was another crack in the company's facade, another voice ready to speak truth to power. The night air had grown cool by the time people filed out of the church hall. Car doors slammed and voices faded as neighbors headed home, carrying both worry and new determination. Nia stood on the steps beside Pastor Laverne, watching the last stragglers disappear into darkness. "You did good in there," Pastor Laverne said, wrapping her cardigan tighter. "Made it real for them. Made it personal." Nia nodded, still processing the energy in that room. The way understanding had spread like wildfire once she explained the contract's hidden meanings. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, an unknown number lighting up the screen. "Nia Brooks?" a deep voice asked when she answered. "This is federal investigator Jonah Briggs. Renee Caldwell gave me your contact information." Pastor Laverne squeezed Nia's arm, stepping closer to listen. "Yes, that's me," Nia said, keeping her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "I've reviewed the preliminary materials Ms. Caldwell sent over. The translation discrepancies, the pattern of retaliation, the vendor documentation. It's compelling. I'd like to meet first thing tomorrow morning." Nia glanced at Pastor Laverne, who nodded encouragement. "What time?" 8 a.m., Federal Building downtown. Bring any additional evidence you've gathered. Based on what I'm seeing, we could be looking at both employment retaliation and corporate fraud charges. The word charges hung in the air like a promise. For the first time since the contract incident, hope felt tangible, something she could almost grasp. "I'll be there," Nia said. After ending the call, she turned to Pastor Laverne. "Federal investigator wants to meet tomorrow." "God is good," Pastor Laverne smiled. "But be careful getting home. They're watching closer now." Nia took a different bus route than usual, scanning for familiar faces or cars that might follow. Her small apartment felt like a sanctuary when she finally locked the door behind her. She spread her evidence across the kitchen table. Photos, notes, audio recordings, timeline documentation. Everything organized by date, backed up digitally, ready to hand over. The clock read 1:47 a.m. when she finally lay down, but sleep proved elusive. Her mind raced with Mandarin characters and security camera angles, with Grant's cold smile and Hank's heavy footsteps. She dozed fitfully for maybe 2 hours before her alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m. Dawn was just a hint on the horizon as Nia walked toward the office building. She'd decided to attempt her normal shift first, showing up early as usual, maintaining routine to avoid suspicion. She could leave for the federal building by 7:30 without drawing attention. The lobby's marble floors gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights. A few early workers hurried past, coffee cups in hand, avoiding eye contact. Nia approached the security desk, badge ready like always. Hank stepped out from behind a column, blocking her path. His security uniform looked freshly pressed, his stance rigid with authority. "You're not authorized today." "I'm scheduled to work," Nia said calmly, holding up her badge. "You can check the system. System shows you're suspended pending investigation." Hank's voice carried across the lobby, drawing stares. "You need to leave the premises immediately." Nia took a deep breath, remembering Renee's advice about staying professional. "I haven't received any suspension notice. I'd like to speak with HR." "Not happening." Hank moved closer, hand on his radio. "Exit now, or I'll have to treat this as trespassing." More security guards appeared, forming a loose circle. Other workers stopped to watch, phones raised discreetly. Nia recognized faces she'd cleaned around for months, people who'd smiled, thanked her, shared break room small talk. Now they stared like she was a stranger. A threat. "I'm leaving," Nia said clearly, turning toward the door. "I'm walking out calmly." "Stop right there." Hank's radio crackled. "Police are already en route." Two officers entered through the revolving door, hands on their belts. Nia's heart pounded as they approached, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm an employee here. There's been a misunderstanding. Ma'am, building security has reported an unauthorized individual refusing to leave," one officer said. "Please put your hands behind your back." The cold click of handcuffs echoed in the marble lobby. Nia caught her reflection in the glass doors, her neat work clothes, her carefully maintained composure, all twisted into a criminal scene. Workers hurried past, eyes down, as if her very presence had become toxic. Movement on the mezzanine caught her eye. Grant Wexler stood at the railing, watching with the same calm expression he wore in board meetings. No surprise, no anger, just cool satisfaction, like everything was proceeding according to schedule. The officers led her outside, past morning commuters who paused to stare and whisper. A news van had already arrived, camera focused on her face. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. In the back of the police car, then in the holding cell, Nia maintained her dignity. She recited translation certificate numbers in her head, focused on breathing steady, refused to let them see fear. A small TV mounted high in the corner blared morning news. Her own face appeared on screen, her employee ID photo beside bold text. "Disgruntled worker arrested." The anchor's voice cut through cell block noise. "Accused of stealing confidential documents after being passed over for promotion." The world seemed to tilt sideways. They weren't just arresting her, they were rewriting her entire story, making her invisible again, but worse, making her wrong, criminal. Everything she'd built, every truth she'd uncovered, twisted into a cautionary tale about knowing her place. The holding cell's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the concrete floor. Nia sat straight-backed on the metal bench, her work clothes wrinkled, but her posture refusing to break. Hour after hour, she replayed each moment like a film reel. The badge scan, Hank's practiced intimidation, the handcuffs bite, Grant watching from above. She'd stayed calm through it all. Even when they'd stripped her of her phone, her dignity, her freedom, she hadn't given them the satisfaction of seeing her crack. "Brooks," a guard called around midnight. "Your attorney's here." Renee Caldwell stood at the processing desk, her suit as crisp as if she were headed to court. Her expression carried both anger and determination as she guided Nia through release paperwork. "Emergency hearing," Renee explained, her pen scratching rapidly across forms. "Judge wasn't impressed with their trespassing story, especially given your active employee status. But the company's spinning this hard and fast." Outside in the night air, Pastor Laverne and Malik waited by Renee's car. Pastor Laverne wrapped Nia in a fierce hug, while Malik paced, his maintenance uniform still on from his shift. "Look at this," he said, holding out his phone. The screen showed a security system page, Naya's badge history. They're already altering records, making it look like your access was revoked weeks ago. Nia pulled out her own phone, restored from property collection. The banking app flashed red. Account temporarily frozen. Legal notice pending. They filed a claim saying you violated a settlement agreement, Renee explained, her voice tight with controlled fury. The same agreement you refused to sign. They're trying to starve me out, Nia said quietly. The night felt heavy around them, the streetlights casting uncertain shadows. We don't panic, Renee stated firmly. We don't lash out. We get what they can't spin away. That side letter and those internal emails showing intent. Once we have those, their whole house of cards collapses. Pastor Laverne touched Nia's arm. I made some calls while you were inside. Remember my friend from the Interfaith Council? The one who works with international adoption agencies? She paused. She knows someone we need to meet. Mei Lin Zhao. Malik looked up from his phone. The translator? The one who exposed that tech company's contract fraud last year? The same, Pastor Laverne nodded. She specializes in legal accuracy certification. If she validates your translation under oath, they can't dismiss you as confused or mistaken. Her reputation carries weight. Nia remembered reading about Mei Lin's testimony in that tech case, how she'd methodically dismantled attempts to hide predatory terms behind language barriers. The company's stock had plummeted when the truth emerged. They'll try to discredit her too, Renee warned. Grant's already got his paid expert contradicting your translation. But Mei Lin's credentials are bulletproof, Pastor Laverne countered. 20 years of court certification, international recognition, a reputation for refusing bribes. She's exactly what we need. Malik checked his phone again, cursing softly. They're scrubbing the security footage from this morning. I can see the deletion logs happening in real time. Document everything, Renee instructed. Every changed record, every lost file. It all shows pattern and intent. Nia stood silent for a moment, feeling the weight of the past 24 hours in her bones. The holding cell had left her stiff, but her mind remained sharp. She thought of Grant's smirk when she'd first translated the contract, his certainty that she'd never dare challenge him. She thought of Hank's practiced intimidation, designed to make her small. She thought of all the invisible workers who'd been erased before her. I stayed calm, she said finally. When they handcuffed me, when they marched me out like a criminal, when they tried to make me ashamed. She looked at each of her allies in turn. I stayed calm because I know what I read in that contract. I know what they're hiding, and I know exactly who I am. Pastor Laverne squeezed her hand. And who is that child? Someone who earned every skill they tried to dismiss. Someone who sees through their polite words to the cruelty underneath. Nia's voice grew stronger. Someone who won't disappear just because they find me inconvenient. I'll contact Mei Lin tonight, Pastor Laverne said. She'll want to review everything you've documented so far. We'll need a secure place to meet, Renee added. Somewhere they can't monitor or interrupt. My church office, Pastor Laverne offered. We've hosted labor organizers there before. We know how to watch for surveillance. Malik checked his watch. I need to head back for night shift. I'll keep tracking their digital cleanup attempts, see what else I can preserve. The group tightened their circle, speaking in low voices as they planned next steps. The company's machinery was vast and ruthless, designed to grind down resistance through 1,000 small cruelties. But they'd made a critical mistake. They'd assumed Nia was alone. She looked at her phone's frozen bank screen, then at the faces of her allies. Her voice came out steady and clear. Bring Mei Lin. I'm done being a ghost. Morning sunlight streamed through the blinds in Renee Caldwell's modest law office, casting thin stripes across stacks of legal documents. The space felt cramped but purposeful, with filing cabinets lining the walls and a coffee maker gurgling in the corner. Mei Lin Zhao sat at the conference table, her laptop open and reading glasses perched on her nose. Her pressed blazer and careful movements reflected decades of professional precision. Nia spread her documents across the table, photographed contract pages, handwritten notes, and timeline records. Her hands were steady despite barely sleeping after the jail release. The familiar Mandarin characters grounded her, each stroke a reminder of evening lessons with her elderly neighbor, of earned knowledge no one could erase. Maylene adjusted her glasses and began reviewing, her finger tracing each character methodically. "This section here," she said, pointing to a particularly dense paragraph. "The phrasing is very specific. They've used relationship adjustment instead of termination, a common tactic in predatory contracts." Renee leaned forward. "How so?" "It sounds softer in Mandarin," Maylene explained. "More collaborative, but the operational effect is the same. They can cut ties without warning and trigger massive penalties. Your translation caught this exactly, Ms. Brooks." Nia nodded. The tone felt wrong. Too polite for what it was actually doing. "Precisely." Maylin turned to another page. "And here, these routing instructions. They've buried them in administrative language, but the meaning is clear. Specific warehouses, specific timing, specific handling requirements." She looked up at Nia. "You were absolutely correct about the shell company pattern. I've seen this structure before in cases involving unauthorized distribution networks." Renee's phone buzzed. She checked it and frowned. Elliott Park just released their official translation to the board. Their paid consultant is claiming Nia misunderstood key terms. Maylin's expression hardened. "Show me." Renee forwarded the document. Maylin scanned it, her frown deepening with each paragraph. "This is deliberately deceptive work. They've taken advantage of Mandarin's contextual nature to strip away implications while maintaining literal accuracy. It's technically correct, but fundamentally dishonest." She opened a new document and began typing rapidly. "I'm preparing a formal rebuttal. I'll break down exactly how they've manipulated meaning through selective interpretation. This kind of linguistic sleight of hand is precisely what damages trust in professional translation." "Can you certify your analysis?" Renee asked. "We'll need it for the court filing." "Absolutely. I'll include my credentials and relevant case history where I've testified about similar manipulation." Maylin's fingers flew across the keyboard. They're counting on no one being able to challenge their expert. That was their mistake. While Maylin worked, Renee drafted emergency motions on her laptop. "I'm filing for evidence preservation, especially their security footage. We need those badge scans, the HR meeting, that garage search, everything they're trying to delete. The printer logs, too," Nia added. "They'll show when the contract drafts were processed." "Good thinking," Renee nodded. "I'm also subpoenaing their email servers before they can accidentally lose anything else." Maylin looked up from her analysis. "This routing language, it's almost identical to a case I worked on in Seattle. That company also tried to hide distribution patterns in administrative terminology. The prosecutors were very interested in the pattern once we decoded it." "Speaking of prosecutors," Renee checked her watch, "Nia has a meeting with Investigator Briggs in 2 hours. We should get you home to clean up first." Nia touched her wrinkled clothes, suddenly aware she was still wearing yesterday's outfit from the arrest. "Yes, a shower would help." "I'll have this analysis completed and certified before your meeting," Maylin promised. "With this and your original translation, they can't dismiss the pattern as coincidence or confusion." They gathered the documents carefully, Renee making copies of everything. The morning sun had climbed higher, burning away the shadows in the office. Nia felt her exhaustion, but stood straight. Professional eyes were finally seeing through professional lies. At her small apartment, Nia showered quickly and changed into fresh clothes. She forced down some toast and coffee, knowing she needed fuel for the day ahead. Her phone buzzed with messages from Pastor Laverne and Malik, checking on her after the arrest. The support steadied her. The federal building downtown loomed in steel and glass, its security desk staffed by actual federal officers instead of corporate guards. Investigator Jonah Briggs met her in a plain interview room, his suit rumpled but his eyes sharp. I've reviewed everything you sent, he said, spreading files on the table. And I've seen the company's response pattern. The arrest, the account freeze, the altered records, it's textbook retaliation escalation. They're trying to bury the contract issue under process and procedure, Nia said. Classic tactic. Jonah nodded. But they've actually strengthened the case by being so aggressive. This much effort to discredit you? They're scared of what you found. He studied Mei Lin's newly arrived analysis. This helps significantly. A certified translator backing your interpretation changes the game. They can't dismiss this as a simple misunderstanding anymore. Jonah leaned forward, his voice serious. Ms. Brooks, if we can secure that side letter and find an internal email chain showing they knew about these implications. He paused significantly. This moves from allegation to indictment. They've given us the pattern. Now we just need the proof they knew exactly what they were hiding. The evening air hung heavy in the deserted restaurant parking lot. Sodium lights cast sickly orange pools between empty spaces, making shadows stretch like accusing fingers. Daphne Klein's silver Mercedes sat alone in the corner, its engine off, but interior lights glowing. Inside, the CFO's manicured hands trembled as she held her phone, staring at the number she'd rehearsed calling a dozen times that day. Her finger hovered over the keypad. She'd always been careful, strategic, rising through ranks by knowing when to speak and when to look away. But Grant's words from their earlier meeting echoed in her head. Someone will have to explain this to the board. His smile had been pleasant, but his eyes had fixed on her like crosshairs. Daphne pressed the numbers, blocking her caller ID. Each ring felt like a hammer against her carefully constructed world. Caldwell Legal Services, Renee's voice answered, professional but guarded. I need to talk about Grant Wexler, Daphne said, her polished tone cracking. About the contract and what's really happening. Silence stretched for 3 seconds. Who am I speaking with? Daphne Klein, CFO. She swallowed hard. Grant's going to make me take the fall when this collapses. He's already moving pieces, reassigning my staff, redirecting my access, isolating me from key meetings. Why should I believe you're actually Daphne Klein? Because I know where the side letter is. Daphne's voice shook. And I know what Grant told us to do with the shipping records. Across the parking lot, hidden behind a restaurant dumpster, Nia Brooks stood with Malik Raines, watching the Mercedes through the gathering darkness. Renee had positioned them there before taking the call, ensuring multiple witnesses, but maintaining safe distance. The side letter exists? Renee's voice remained measured. In a private legal folder, encrypted. Daphne's composure cracked further. Grant made us create special documentation protocols, separate from normal channels. He said it was for competitive security. But really, it was to hide the pattern, Renee finished. Yes, Daphne's breath hitched. I won't meet inside the building. He has people watching everything. But I have copies, digital files, the letter, emails, instructions about sanitizing language. What do you want in exchange? Protection. The word came out raw. When this breaks, I need assurance I won't be the only one facing consequences. I'll give a statement. Full cooperation. But I need it in writing that my assistance will be considered. Renee's tone remained steady. I'll need to verify the documents first. Then we can discuss terms for witness cooperation. I understand. Daphne's fingers drummed against her steering wheel. I can transfer the files now, but you have to promise. Promise they won't trace it back to me until I'm protected. Send them through the secure link I'm texting you. We'll review them with our translator present. In their hiding spot, Nia and Malik watched Daphne's silhouette bend over what looked like a laptop. Minutes crawled by. Nia's phone buzzed softly. Renee forwarding the incoming files. The first document opened. The side letter, dense, with Mandarin text. Nia began reading, her whispered translation carrying to Malik. Regarding special handling procedures for Category C shipments. They're using formal business terms, but the subtext is clear. Look, this section about alternate routing and documentation adjustments. They're describing how to move products through shell companies without raising flags. More files arrived, email chains, meeting notes, tracking logs. In one message, Grant wrote, "Ensure all language is appropriately sanitized before distribution. Certain shipments must remain outside standard logging protocols." Jesus, Malik breathed. Nia kept translating, her voice steady despite the growing weight of what they were uncovering. The Mandarin sections revealed layers of meaning. Innocent phrases that, properly understood, outlined a deliberate scheme to bypass regulations and conceal distribution patterns. In her car, Daphne had begun to cry, quiet, controlled sobs that shook her shoulders. "I told myself it was just business," she said into the phone, "just numbers on spreadsheets. But when I saw which neighborhoods they routed through, those are real families. Real children. We'll need you to put that in your statement," Renee replied. "The human impact matters. I'll write it now. Everything I know. Everyone involved." Daphne wiped her eyes, smearing expensive mascara. "Grant can't. He can't just erase people who get in his way anymore." Nia finished reviewing the last document, her translation confirming what they'd suspected. A coordinated effort to hide harmful practices behind language barriers and corporate paperwork. Renee's voice carried clearly through the phone. "This isn't just your case now. This is everyone's." The parking lot felt different now, the shadows no longer threatening but revealing, the silence no longer empty but full of turning points. In her car, Daphne began typing her statement, each word a brick pulled from the wall of her former loyalty. Near the dumpster, Nia and Malik stood witness to power shifting in real time, while through the phone, Renee prepared to transform evidence into justice. The courthouse hallway gleamed under fluorescent lights, its marble floors almost as pristine as the executive suite where this all began. Nia Brooks stood straight-backed beside Renee Caldwell, her attorney's presence a steady anchor against the morning's tension. Mei Lin Zhao reviewed translation notes one final time, while investigator Jonah Briggs leaned against a wall, his federal badge catching occasional glints of light. The elevator chimed, and Grant Wexler emerged with a fleet of corporate lawyers. Their shoes clicked against marble in perfect rhythm, expensive suits and practiced smiles creating a wall of confidence. Grant's own smile seemed carved from ice, perfect, cold, and entirely artificial. "Remember," Renee murmured to Nia, "let them throw their first punch. They'll be expecting fear." Inside the courtroom, Grant's legal team went straight for character assassination. Their lead attorney, Richard Morton, stood with theatrical concern. "Your Honor, Ms. Brooks repeatedly accessed restricted areas without authorization," Morton declared. "She manipulated a casual comment about translation into baseless accusations. This is, quite simply, an attempt to extract money through fabricated claims." Nia kept her face neutral, though her hands tightened slightly in her lap. She watched Grant lean back, so certain of his script. Renee rose slowly, deliberately. "Interesting interpretation," she said. "Let's discuss unauthorized access." She played the audio from Nia's personnel file, her original badge approval for all floors. Then she displayed time-stamped screenshots showing how those permissions were altered after the contract incident. "They didn't restrict her access because she was unauthorized," Renee stated. "They restricted it because she understood too much." Morton tried to interrupt, but Renee was already cueing the garage audio. Hank Doyle's voice filled the courtroom. "Pick it up. All of it. Let's see how you like cleaning on your knees." Several board members shifted uncomfortably. The judge's expression darkened. "This wasn't about security," Renee continued. "This was about punishment. And why? Because Ms. Brooks could read something they needed translated." Mei Lin Zhao took the stand next, her credentials impeccable. She walked through the contract passages, explaining how Nia's translation captured crucial context that the company's paid consultant had deliberately softened. "This phrase here," Mei Lin pointed, "Guanxi Diaozheng," They translated it as relationship adjustment. But in this context, with these accompanying terms, it's clearly describing a termination clause with severe penalties. The consultant's version removes all the teeth. "And you're certain of this interpretation?" the judge asked. "Absolutely." Mei Lin's voice carried calm authority. "The pattern is familiar. I've seen similar phrasing used to obscure punitive clauses in other contracts. Ms. Brooks's translation was not only accurate, it likely saved the company from a devastating financial trap." Grant's leg began bouncing under the table. His attorney tried redirecting, but surely a night janitor couldn't possibly understand the complexities of international business language. "I've reviewed Ms. Brooks's translation certification," Mei Lin cut in. "Her understanding of business Mandarin is sophisticated and precise. The only mistake here was assuming she wouldn't comprehend what she was reading." Jonah Briggs presented next, laying out a timeline connecting the contract language to suspicious shipping patterns and shell company structures. The side letter's instructions about documentation adjustments matched known fraud indicators. "These weren't random business decisions," Jonah explained. "The language choices reveal deliberate attempts to conceal certain activities." "This is absurd!" Grant suddenly burst out, rising from his chair. "She's a janitor who got lucky with some basic phrases. She should know her role instead of—" "Mr. Wexler," the judge's voice cracked like a whip, "you will sit down and wait to be recognized." "Your Honor, I'm the CEO of a major—" "Sit down." Grant sat, his charm cracking into visible anger. The judge turned to him directly. "Since you're eager to speak, let's address the initial incident. Did you or did you not publicly challenge Ms. Brooks to translate this contract? It was clearly a joke. Yes or no, Mr. Wexler?" Grant's jaw tightened. "Yes." "And did you offer a specific sum of money for this translation?" "It wasn't meant to be taken." "The amount, Mr. Wexler," through clenched teeth. $1 million. "And was this contract urgent? Time-sensitive?" "We were in the middle of a board call." "So, yes?" The judge's pen tapped his desk. "You needed an immediate translation during a critical negotiation, and Ms. Brooks provided one that proved accurate?" Grant's silence spoke volumes. The board chair was called next, forced to confirm that Nia's translation had indeed identified serious issues that required pausing the deal. Yes, the contract was urgent. Yes, Grant had initiated the translation request. Yes, Nia's interpretation had likely prevented major financial damage. With each admission, Grant's confident facade cracked further. His leg bouncing became more pronounced. He scribbled aggressive notes to his attorneys, who began to look increasingly concerned. The judge reviewed the assembled evidence: badge records, audio files, translation verifications, timeline correlations, and Daphne's extensive documentation. His expression grew progressively more severe. "This court is ordering expanded subpoenas for all communications related to this contract and its implementation," he announced. "Furthermore, given the evidence of potential criminal activity, I am referring these materials to federal prosecutors for review." Grant's pen snapped in his hand, leaving an ink stain like a bruise on his pristine notepad. His smile, that practiced, powerful smile that had launched careers and crushed opposition, finally shattered completely. The boardroom looked different now. Sunlight streamed through the wall of windows, reflecting off the polished table where Grant Wexler's nameplate once commanded attention. 2 security officers stood by the door, not to intimidate Nia Brooks, but to escort Grant when he arrived to face the board's decision. Nia sat quietly in a chair she'd once cleaned around, watching faces she'd previously only seen in passing. The interim CEO, Barbara Halloway, shuffled papers with deliberate care. The board members spoke in hushed tones, their usual confidence replaced by grim determination. The door opened. Grant strode in wearing his trademark smile, though it wavered at the edges. He'd lost weight in recent weeks, his suit hanging slightly loose around the shoulders. His eyes darted to Nia, then away, as if her presence was a glitch in his reality. "Mr. Wexler, Barbara began, her voice steady. The board has concluded its emergency review. Given the evidence presented and the ongoing federal investigation, we are exercising our authority to remove you from your position, effective immediately. Grant's smile crystallized into something brittle. This is absurd. One disgruntled, "Your badge and company devices," Barbara continued, gesturing to a waiting HR representative. "The security team will escort you to clear your office. You can't possibly—" "We can, and we are." The board chair's voice cut through Grant's protest. The federal investigators have expanded their case beyond the contract fraud. The pattern of retaliation, the falsified security logs, the targeted harassment, it's all documented now. Down the hall, Hank Doyle was simultaneously being informed of his termination. His personnel file now included evidence of unlawful searches, manipulated access records, and coordinated intimidation. His law enforcement background couldn't shield him from his own recorded threats. Grant stood, straightening his jacket with trembling hands. "You're making a mistake. Everything I did was for this company's benefit, including targeting a qualified translator who tried to prevent us from signing a toxic contract?" Barbara's words landed like precise cuts. "Including orchestrating her arrest to cover up broader fraud? She was just a janitor who saved this company millions by identifying hidden penalties," the board chair interrupted. "Who documented systematic retaliation? Who proved that language skills matter more than job titles?" He shuffled papers. "The U.S. Attorney's Office seems particularly interested in your emails about adjusting certain shipping records." The security officers stepped forward. Grant's face flushed deep red as they approached. The same officers who had once followed his orders to intimidate Naya. "This way, Mr. Wexler," one said firmly. After Grant was escorted out, Barbara turned to Nia. "The settlement agreement is finalized. Full reinstatement if you want it, though I understand you have other plans. Public apology on record. Policy overhaul under third-party compliance monitoring." She allowed herself a small smile. "And of course, the financial settlement matching the original $1 million bet, plus damages." Nia nodded, thinking of the community center where Pastor Laverne was already preparing space for the new scholarship program. The funds would support language training, legal education, and worker rights advocacy. Not just a single victory, but a permanent pipeline for change. "We'd like to retain you as a consulting translator," Barbara added. "Your skills are clearly valuable to this company." "I'll consider it," Nia replied carefully, "after the scholarship program is established." Mei Lin Zhao had already agreed to help structure the language certification courses, offering expertise without taking control. "Your vision," she'd told Nia. "I'm just here to amplify it." Renee would oversee the legal components, turning her battle experience into practical training. Malik had successfully leveraged the scandal to secure stronger union protections, ensuring future workers would have real defense against institutional abuse. The settlement signing took less than an hour. Nia's signature looked steady on the page. Not a surrender document like they'd first tried to force on her, but a testament to consequences finally flowing upward. Later that afternoon, Nia walked the marble corridor one last time. Her footsteps echoed differently now. No cart to push, no forced silence to maintain. The folder in her hands read "Scholarship Winners," its weight full of possibility rather than burden. She passed the supply closet where Hank had once cornered her, now just another door. The security desk where her badge had been scrutinized stood empty during shift change. The elevator didn't require special permission anymore. Near the executive suite, she caught her reflection in the glass walls. The same person who had mopped these floors now stood straight-backed in professional attire, holding the power to reshape opportunities rather than beg for them. Not because someone had rescued her, but because she had refused to be erased. A cleaning crew member pushed a cart past, and Nia nodded in acknowledgement. The woman nodded back without lowering her eyes. One of the first benefits of the new union contract was that maintenance staff could look directly at executives without fear of reprimand. The portraits on the walls would be changing soon. Grant's carefully curated image would come down, replaced by new leadership photographs that included diverse faces and backgrounds. But more importantly, the invisible barriers, the ones built from quiet cruelty and systemic dismissal, had already begun to crumble. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.